5th, 2024. I'll be your host tonight. I'm Dana. Welcome, everybody. You can call in at 709-589-4406. We're in Canada. And I hope you're having a great day. I'm sure a lot of people are not. It's the elections, right? And so we're probably just going to do half a show tonight because of the elections. I kind of forgot about it. I know a lot of people are, including myself, are looking for little clips and everything. But getting this up and running was more important today. Normally I would have been grabbing all kinds of articles on this and stories, and because I'm curious like that about some of the stuff that gets said. Like Jimmy Kimmel had come out and said that people should vote on Thursday for Donald Trump, for instance, just 2 days after the elections. I got a poll for you tonight. Should Japan apologize for polluting the entire planet, the oceans and the water, with massive radioactive fallout? And I just want people to remember what's really going on here. The whole planet, the entire planet, has been compromised. Not just Fukushima. Fukushima was brutal. And every nuclear academic, including the Women for Nuclear, including International Atomic Energy Agency's marine specialists and the lady over there, just what you want to call her, all of them would have known that the reactors and the fuel pools were gone. They chose not to say nothing. This is symmetrical throughout the entire nuclear industry. They chose not to say anything. And so we definitely got a way to go before we get everything inputted. We picked up new hard drives today. The old ones, if you open the box, they won't take them back. Ow. And we got lucky. James Lucid donated 400 last night, and Collett donated 25. And that covered the hard drives. We never got the big hard drives like we wanted, but that's okay. We got the SSDs, and they're amazing difference from the other hard drives. I'll use the other hard drives, which is 8 terabytes, for storage, because I got a lot of information that should be put on other storage, right? Alrighty. International Atomic Energy Agency's first Cuban collaborating center for coastal and marine health. Like, what are they talking about? When I seen that, I was like, oh, God. The word corruption is not appropriate. Like, you need something more strongly. Criminal, I think, is the right word for it. Florence, the director of the International Atomic Energy Agency's Marine Environment Laboratories. The whole story reeks of just cover up. The first IAEA collaborating center, the very first, for marine research in a small island developing state, has been officially designated in Cuba. An ostracized Cuba is an appropriate place to find a willing victim, I'm sure. Has been working with the International Atomic Energy Agency for many years, applying nuclear and isotope techniques to manage fragile Cuban marine environments more effectively. Isotope techniques to manage the ocean, the environment. Is there any limit to how evil these people actually are? Is there anything that's too evil when it comes to these people? And they talk about the effects of pollutants in the environment and using isotopes in nuclear. So in other words, the way they frame these narratives, the way they frame that narrative is that there's pollutants that are causing problems, not nuclear, but nuclear is the problem, right? And the director of the International Atomic Energy Agency's Marine Environmental Laboratories. Let me show you these pictures. We do research on the ocean too. And the species you're looking at are now exterminated thanks to nuclear. We know that because I was out for 6 years doing research expeditions. And I covered from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska post-Fukushima. And post-Fukushima is the French government, the IRSN, the government study from France, a million times normal, was actually 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. And it covers the whole planet. And this is why we went out and done the research expeditions. This is the model based, now the model you just seen was based on 8 days. This model is based on 16 days when it stops. At 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137, so you're going to be loaded with uranium, plutonium, americium, and all the other isotopes. Because the reactors really did blow up. And despite what they're So they're using Cuba to try to manipulate people, which are dependent upon the ocean, right? To manipulate them into blaming tin cans and pop bottles and cardboard. But it's not, because we went out and done the research expeditions for years. Very difficult stuff we're talking about too, by the way. And the species to your left are now exterminated. That's an extinction event. This is post-Fukushima. And what's incredible about this story is that the universities, the fisheries and oceans, the international communities all refuse to acknowledge that the species to your left are gone. They refuse to acknowledge it. You will never take those pictures again. And I used to dive this coastline. I'm very familiar with those species. We have endless documentations of the radioactive fallout. There somewhere. Neptunium-239 dispersion, North America. Plutonium-239 dispersal. These are based on TEPCO's numbers. Remember, they closed, or food was banned by 55 countries from 14 prefectures. This much radiation came out. And it, as you know with the models, it covered the whole planet. That model is 20 days. And our research expeditions that went on for 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean, counting the species to your left, they're gone. They're actually gone. They never came back. And this is why we've done 6 years, to see if the species recovered or started to come back. And so it's pretty, if the species came back, it'd be impossible to miss it, right? It was incredible diversity, all the way from Vancouver to Alaska and all the way to California, New Mexico. These are the species that's to your left that you would have encountered if you were in the tidal zones in the Pacific coast. Those species now are exterminated. They never came back, and that means they're not coming back. And what's more important, nuclear or those species to your left? They are. The nuclear industry has always attacked the water. Because if you attack the water, you destroy all life, right? And they attacked it with radioactive fallout. They knew exactly what they were doing. And I know because I went out there. And ran the gauntlet for 4 to 5 months a year. And the species are nowhere to be found. So when you see International Atomic Energy Agency refusing to acknowledge any of this, or the universities or media, this was a German study, by the way, right there. No bigger rent-seeking parasite, this is an appropriate name when you're talking about nuclear, than the nuclear industry. Matt Kean, Australia, tells the former coalition colleagues in a heated debate. That's a brilliant way to put it. Why sugarcoat it? A bit of a struggle getting everything accomplished today, and still getting in the studio and pulling something off for tonight. So don't expect too much, unfortunately. I'm sure tomorrow night will be back to our previous glory. Close to it. I still got probably a week and a half of reloading material. I'm not looking forward to it at all. It was brutal for the last few hours. But I'm so happy to be back and with the right equipment again, right? So it's a big deal for me. Very grateful. It's hard to appreciate how much stress I've been under for the last number of days. Hearing that the nuclear industry is trying to put one over the eyes of the Australian public, the Australian pro-nuclear community is really... They're really vicious. They're really something. We've covered them so much, my goodness. And we've never come across like a reasonable story in nuclear anywhere, let alone Australia and Britain seems to have the most contempt for the population. Don't get me wrong. Every nuclear country has nothing but contempt for the population. But the worst ones are Australia, certainly British first and then Australia. Total parliamentary Canada's pretty bad, no doubt about it. Total parliamentary estimate hearing, there's no bigger rent-seeking parasite than the nuclear industry. I just love that. It's so rare to get someone that's honest. Appearing at estimates for the first time since his appointment in June, Kean argued, if I butcher your names, sue me. No, just kidding, but that's the way it rolls around here, unfortunately. Argued with the independent Senator Gerard Rennick about the cost of nuclear, telling the hearing, if you want to see who are needing rent-seeking, trying to put one over the eyes of the Australian public, it's the nuclear industry. They're insane. It's the only way to describe them. They found that the nuclear was the most expensive form of large-scale energy available, estimating an initial plant could cost more than $16 billion. Well, Britain has tons of experience. It's one of the first, not the first, but one of the first to have a nuclear power plant up and running worldwide. Is going to burn $46 billion. We're talking about US dollars on top of that. Australia with no experience and ripe for the picking. They got 7 of the biggest weapons producer already set up shop in Australia. And so, you know, they're going to have their hands deep inside of whatever nuclear industry comes along. The opposition has suggested it would limit the role of the large-scale renewable energies. Why would you limit the role of the large-scale renewable energy? Gas is the most expensive form of electricity in the national electricity markets. Is largely restricted to peaking power turned on only when needed. Provides less than 3% of electricity in the national grid. It's quite interesting, isn't it? Australia has another thing where they have a massive amount of people with solar power under roofs, and they're accelerating that particular phenomenon. And it's very effective. It's really something what they got done there. Bruce Powers, senior manager, appointed president of Women in Nuclear. Bruce Powers, senior manager, who we've covered quite a bit on this site, now is appointed president, and we knew this last year, I think, that this was going to happen. Women in Nuclear. Women in Nuclear. That's not her, by the way. More than 700 women in nuclear attended this year's 21st annual conference. 700 women in nuclear. Imagine how much money that cost for 700 women to go there and plot the demise of whatever's left on the planet. More than 700 women in nuclear attended this year's 21st annual conference. 21st. And how often did you talk about Fukushima? Not a single time. How many of them went to Fukushima? Not a single one. Two-faced, eh? The really definition of scumbag is, excuse the French Canadian in me, the definition of lowlife. The Australian had it right, the parasites. Women in Nuclear is a worldwide association of women working professionally in various fields of the nuclear industry, professionally. As part of the conference, several members of the Women in Nuclear toured Bruce Power here in Canada. And also at the conference, Senior Program Manager at Bruce Power, Emma Kean, was appointed incoming president for the Women in Nuclear. Despicable, eh? Her legacy. Kean's legacy is disgusting. We have a pivotal opportunity to address climate change. There's some hard cases, eh? They refuse to be human. That's what we see with these people. Fukushima radioactive fallout is climate change. The 80 years of nuclear is climate change. So think of this as snow, for instance, right? That's a snowstorm. Snowstorm covers the whole planet in 16 days. But actually, it's a nuclear meltdown, a radioactive plume. Carbon doesn't cover the planet. Carbon doesn't pulse energy almost at the speed of light every second for millions of years. Nuclear does that. It's such a low life to even say something like this. Opportunity to address climate change. How is, like, there's 660 gigawatts of solar alone came online this year. There was nothing in nuclear that added to their grid, right? Nuclear still going backwards. Like five reactors went offline and 4 came online or something. Which is like minus 1 gigawatt. Where 660 gigawatts of solar came online. So which one is addressing climate change per se? If we take their narrative, it ain't nuclear. There is no nuclear renaissance. I don't know how these people can be that, how you get that many delusional people together at one time. And they love doing that, don't they? Get their picture taken. They just love promoting that stuff. While advancing gender parity, inclusion, like, again, right, there's this agenda. Forget about nuclear. Let's only talk about agendas. Climate change, genders. They're so disappointing that these are not women. These are parasites, for goodness sakes. Refusing to acknowledge Fukushima happened and perpetrating the radioactive fallout crime upon the rest of the planet. It's nothing to be proud of. It's nothing to sit around and smile about. As I step into this role as a woman of color, like, white is only 2% of the population of the entire planet. With interracial relationships, that is going to be whittled away to nothing, right? So the majority of the women on this planet are women of color. Right? But it's just meant to demonize. It's meant to compartmentalize the women, right? We're doing it because we're women of color. When are you going to be a woman of humanity, I wonder? we're not just smashing glass ceilings together. Like, these are very manipulative people. We're building a whole new skyline where diversity, equality, and inclusion leads the way in this nuclear renaissance. There is no nuclear renaissance. What the hell are you talking about? Just let me bring it up, because I've already mentioned it once. If I'm going to mention it twice, I should bring up the documentation, shouldn't I? Women of color. I don't know, maybe I'm weird because I don't see people's colors. I just see people. I see people, we all have the same hopes and dreams. We all want a house and picket fence and a 2-car garage. We all want a coffee table and a couch. And I'm no different than anybody else. I get the flu like everybody else. I have heart attacks like everybody else. Yes. Hang on here. I forgot what I'm looking for. Oh, that's right. There we go. Well, there's so much of this information that came out recently, right? Yeah. I might not find it tonight. We're starting to get back to normal, but try this up here. Renewables. No, that's 2020 versus nuclear. Yeah, I can't find it. It's just my head is messed up from the madness. Let's go to 2023 for a few giggities. There's no nuclear. Like, when you say there's a nuclear in this nuclear renaissance, then, and you know there's no nuclear renaissance, you're the leader here in Canada, for goodness sakes. Nuclear goes backwards again as wind and solar enjoy another year of record growth. This is last year's. Nuclear power suffered a net loss of 1.7 gigawatt capacity in 2023, whereas renewable capacity additions amounted to a record 507 gigawatts last year. This year is going to be 660 gigawatts. It's just solar, not counting other renewables like wind or geothermal, and which is almost 50% higher than 2022. And they're expecting a 40% jump next year. So 660 gigawatts this year and a 40% jump of just solar next year. Back to the Bruce Power story. In this nuclear renaissance, we're making history on two fronts tackling climate change. Tackling climate change and what inclusion looks like. It's pretty revolting that they would do this. I'm deeply engaged in community outreach with underrepresented youth. And that's the most frightening facet that we notice of this industry. It goes after the youth to get them as they're in school. And we see it all the time with them showing up in the schools. And then because the children don't understand, right? This is child abuse for them to go near our youth, for our children. That is the most abusive thing about the nuclear industry. We see that continuously. And what's the most danger to a child right now is radioactive fallout. They're 1,000 times more vulnerable than an adult is for the same dose. While Oklo, Nano Nuclear, NuScale power stocks all dropped today, these are companies that don't have a product. They don't have a reactor. They don't have a license for a reactor. They don't have a license into the regulatory agency for their small modular reactors that don't exist. I should start up a company, small modular reactors. Get on the stock market, make a fortune, steal it all, and just go bankrupt like the rest of them. What would we call it? Pro-nuclear small modular reactors. One for everybody's bum. $9.99 at Walmart. Get your little reactor, put it up in your bum, and you can work all day, all night. Your eyes will glow like headlights. Small modular reactors, yippee. Just because nuclear power is popular. It's just the funniest stuff. Nuclear is popular. I haven't heard that one in a while. Nuclear is popular. Has asked the increased amount of the power going out to Amazon data centers from 300 megawatts, which is enough for 300,000 people's homes, or 300,000 homes and businesses, right? That's what Amazon is using at the one spot. That's absurd. 300 megawatts. Amazon's share prices then went down 1.6%. And Talon stocks fell, we covered it a little bit last night, 4.5%. Man, there's something else. It's a cult, right? It's a death cult, I guess is the better way to put it. The insanity of nuclear is, I mean, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags in Japan and 3% of the land. If that doesn't scare the daylights out of you, you're not paying attention. Just bear with me. I got to... Here we go. La, 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 la. So, like when I think, or when you think of nuclear, you should think of, that's what they're doing to your kids, right? Nano Nuclear Energy is developing yet another type of nuclear micro reactors, doing worst of all, down 10%. And what's crazy is these companies, like NuScale, 2.84%, are on the stock exchange for investors to buy into, but they don't have a license into the regulatory agency. They don't. They're 25 to 50 years away from making a profit. And they're on the stock exchange. Because nuclear is popular, Dana. Why are their stocks down so much? Well, like they say, Constellation takes in $23.5 billion in revenue each year. And Vistra isn't too far behind with $14 billion in annual revenue. There's a $9.5 billion discrepancy there. That is far beyond. $1 billion is actually a lot of money, right? But they don't have a product. What makes this story especially interesting, and by interesting I mean worrisome. So they can't just come out and say worrisome. They got to put the word interesting and then make it to the point where you probably went off to vomit so you didn't hear what they actually had to say, as if you're smart. that these companies are focused on developing small reactors that can be co-located next to the data centers. And so they don't want a precedence where they're rejected by the regulatory agencies, because the business plan are for the data centers, they're saying, right? But the best stocks out there right now are the black plastic bags for picking up radiation. They got 30 million of them. Now, if you had bought stocks in those companies that were making the plastic, those big 1-ton black bags for picking up radiation in Japan, you would have cashed in the first 2 or 3 years. That was big money to keep the scam alive. As such, the regulator's decision appears to pose a greater threat to the business plan of NuScale, Oklo, Nano Nuclear. The fact that none of these three companies yet has an actual business up and running and generating revenue or earning profit naturally makes investors more nervous. Like, if you're an investor, why would you invest in these guys for? They don't even have a application to the regulatory agency. How can anybody be so stupid? There's 100 of these companies out there. They're all, if they're not on the stock market, they're trying, and they're raising money through the industry itself, right? There's we're really missing something. There's something going on. Like, they say, oh, it's for this and it's for that, but that's not why they're trying to create this. And after 80 years, how come they still haven't created one? And what makes anybody think this current generation, and that it's going to be running on, they said, on the mixed oxide fuel, plutonium mixed oxide fuel. Like reactor 3 at Fukushima, plutonium mixed oxide that cooked off. And let me bring up a picture for you, maybe. Like, Fukushima had 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools melt down. Now, you can call these meltdowns, but reactor 3 and 4 were actually they ejected or burnt off their reactor cores and fuel pools immediately. This was a pulse event to the entire planet on top of that. Have you ever been hit with like a pea shooter when you were young? You remember that? Stings, right? This is like every human and animal and bird and insect and butterfly and jellyfish and whale and everything on this planet got hit with millions and millions and millions of atoms. They're surrounding you now, pulsing through your house every second. They've destroyed the DNA and the chromosomes of the majority of the species worldwide already, and they're not reproducing. We're not seeing a reproduction of anybody, let alone of any species, let alone humans. We're seeing that total falter. But the species, because they reproduce, like the insects, and they produce so many times each year, generationally compared to what a human would do, right? So it shows up there first. And of course, there's many, 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 many species dependent upon insects. It's absurd how that whole food chain actually works. And then the radioactive fallout actually, to put, like, when you put it into perspective, the reactors cook off and lose their inventories. Their inventories or plumes covers the whole planet right away. This one in 19.5 days, 468 hours. And then the oceans are immediately completely saturated in all the fresh water. And there goes the phytoplankton, the bases of the food chain, the bases of the oxygen chain, the bases of the carbon sequestration chain, because they're at the surface. And all the models, all the studies, all shows the same thing. Let me just run you through it, actually. I didn't do everything properly, so that's okay. I'll do the quick version of it. These people are crazy, though, when you think about You think about what they'd done post Fukushima. What they'd done right away, the first couple of days, was shocking. These pictures were available, and they were like, no meltdowns. Everything's contained. Nothing got off site. This was 2013. They had people pretending that they were on top of the buildings, these 190-foot buildings. These were actually, at one time, 190 feet, 65 meters. So reactor 1 detonated. Reactor 2 blew up, caught fire and blew up and blew up and caught fire and blew up. Reactor 3, you guessed it, blew up and caught fire and blew up and caught fire. Reactor 4, in 2013, they gutted it right down till there's nothing left. And then they put this contraption over it and claimed that they were in the buildings. And if you see somebody in these paper suits, then they're the homeless, the destitute victims of society. You can't name a single nuclear corporation that worked at Fukushima because they didn't, and they won't, and they never will. The fact that none of these three companies yet has an actual business up and running and generating revenue or earning profits naturally makes investors nervous. Well, if the investors knew that they don't even have an application into the regulatory agency, which takes 10 years to go, once they get it there, and then they got to go build an experimental reactor, run that for years and get the kinks out of it, then they have to redesign and run that for years to get the kinks out of that, then they can apply for reproduction, for a production. It's not that you can just, here's our design, we're going to build 100 of them. It doesn't work that way. So the investors will never get their money back. And they don't want the investors pulling the money out. So that's why you see all the panic yesterday. And the stocks were artificially inflated, right, over the last couple of weeks. First you had Facebook going to do small modular reactors. It did Microsoft a few days later going to do small modular reactors. And Amazon's going to do small modular reactors a few days after that. And there was this big fury, buy. And then, the regulator's like, hey, we're not doing that. Stop scamming everybody. And pull the plug on it. And now they were dumping their shares. That's what this was all about. And then the profit that the people that just sold their shares because the shares have fallen, they're going to buy that back with the money they scammed from the people who originally bought the shares. They're left with a big profit. Now they got their shares back in their pocket. A couple of weeks, a month down the road, they'll pull the same scam on a different guys. They've been doing this for 13 years straight. A robot. Like, to call this a robot is so far-fetched. It's a tong, right? It's the most basic. How many? $46 million to build a set of tongs? It's the stupidest story. They're such worthless people, aren't they? A robot, it's absurd to call this a robot when you look at how many things are robots today. Like almost every robot, every child robot is much more sophisticated than the tongs. Oh, and Mary Yamaguchi. AP, obviously, right? Who always does a cover story for Fukushima. That's who they roll out every single time is Mary Yamaguchi. I went to her Twitter account a few years back and just wrote one word, murderer. A robot retrieves the first melted fuel. When I seen this, I blew up laughing. I was like, I just blew up laughing. I was laughing so hard. A robot retrieves the first melted fuel from Fukushima nuclear reactor. So stupid looking. And once you put that near the fuel that's so radioactive, you can never use it again. You can't get near it. So if they're going to send somebody in close to it, when you take it out, that person's getting a lethal dose. So that's going to be a homeless, another couple of dead homeless. Calling a set of tongs a robot that's desperation, isn't it? A remote controlled has safely returned. Mary Yamaguchi. It's just the most bizarre. Safely returned. It's absurd. Should have just put a paper suit on. We wouldn't have to worry about it, I suppose. Right? I should get like. That's brilliant. I should get some kind of prize for that, shouldn't I? If you put a paper suit on it, you could use it over and over, see? You know I'm right. Everybody's like, Dana's finally lost it. From inside one of the 3 damaged reactors, there's 4. There's reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4 melted down. Despite their telling you nothing melted down, as according to August the 24th last year, International Atomic Energy Agency in Japan, South Korea, China, Taiwan have come out with this cover story. From inside one of the 3 damaged reactors, because they refused to acknowledge reactor 4 blew up and caught fire and caught fire and blew up and blew up and caught fire. And when you call them damaged and they're actually destroyed and gone, they really are the most worthless humans I've ever seen. There's nothing out there compares to them. Everything they do is a threat to the 8 million species and humanity. So to call this a damaged reactor when the reactors were 100 feet above the stumps with the fuel pools, at the top of these 19-story, 190-foot, 65-meter buildings. It's the most important story in human history, period, and it always will be. And the nuclear industry spends all day, every day out there trying to bludgeon everybody's common sense. Clipped a piece of gravel of about 5 millimeters, 0.2 inches. The size of Raphael Grossi's dick. The size of a tiny bit of granular. A tiny bit. 0.2 inches. A little bit bigger than a snowflake. So number 2 reactor, like, it upsets me when after workers in full hazmat gear pulled it out of the containment vessel. They're talking about the tongs. There is no containment vessel. They used a word, but there's no containment vessel. At reactor 2, reactor 1, reactor 3, or reactor 4. They're just the worst people imaginable. They have to keep telling the lie because to keep people fighting with each other, right? So officially, at the very top of the building, you see the roof right over there. That's what they claim it looks like inside of the stump of reactor 4. Remember, they gutted that thing right down to the ground. If the radioactivity exceeds the limit, the robot must go back inside the reactor to find another piece. So if the little tiny granular piece that they took out exceeds a high level of radiation, of course, if they're going and taking it out of the fuel itself, they claim, the molten mass that's there. But reactor 3 and 4 ejected the reactor core right out of the building, right? Bear with me. I never get tired of doing this, eh? A lawyer is a lawyer and will always be a lawyer. He's nothing but a lawyer. But these are dangerous mass serial killer lawyers. There's other serial killers besides the person with a gun and a knife. The worst serial killers is the nuclear industry. These are extermination machines. These are disease factories without melting down. The fuel pools are always hemorrhaging radiation 24 hours a day. Hi, Joe. Hi, everybody. We're not doing a long show tonight because I know it's the Americans' U.S. Elections are going on. And these types of circuses only come along every 4 years or so. I find it quite entertaining. It's one of the few little things in life that'll break my concentration because all I do is nuclear, right? And with whichever politician gets in, they're going to support Israel. And Israel wants to nuke everything out there now. Benjamin Netanyahu just fired Gallant, for goodness sakes. This is insane. Iran says they're going to thrash him properly real soon. And if they don't thrash him good enough, Israel's stupid enough to come back and attack him again, which is only going to escalate it to nukes at that stage, right? An estimated 880 tons of fatally radioactive molten fuel remain in them. Well, there's nothing in reactor 3 and reactor 4, period. That's not even up for debate. They ejected the reactor cores right out of the buildings or burnt them. Like reactor 4 burnt. It blew up, right? The original footage, let me bring that up for you. I'm slowly starting to import things. I've been trying to scavenge from, because I didn't have a lot of time today. Ended up taking the truck to the city. It wasn't too smart. I got away with it though. And then when I came home, I took the front wheel off to see how bad the brake shoes were, and it's bad. I've got rivets on my drums, gouging my drums. So I got drums ordered in and brakes, shoes. I can't go moving a truck anymore till they show up. They're not going to show up for another 5-6 days or something. Which is fine because I got 5 or 6 days of hard work to do in the studio to try to get everything back to stomping. So when you look at these reactors, right, this is what it would look like a week after, say, the reactor's detonated. Say about a 17th or 18th, this is what the site would look like. And see the thousands of people there working? Oh, that's right, you don't, because there's no one can work there. It's lethal doses everywhere. I say the words I laugh, but I have great concern about TEPCO's assertions that they burn 7,000 paper suits a day in local incinerators at their site. They built a new incinerator on that site, by the way, at a nuclear meltdown. You have two incinerators. These are huge incinerators on the site of multiple nuclear meltdowns. We never had 4 reactors melt down in history at the one time before that I know about. And we've never had a fuel pool, let alone 8 of them, which there was 2 on top of each of these buildings. And they were stuffed with reactor cores. And the reason is because they don't have a repository anywhere worldwide, certainly not in Japan, right? So the fuel is kept in common spent fuel pools. And the fuel, what makes the fuel so dangerous is it's still splitting atoms. And it does that for millions of years. This way it's dangerous for so long. And you can't contain the atoms. And that's why almost every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms. No specific plan for the fuel removal or the fuel debris or its final disposal have been decided. No, it's about propaganda, what they're doing. It's strictly about propaganda. Here's some more of it. Taiwan says the radiation levels are normal after the 10th Fukushima discharge. So, see, last year on August 24th, the International Atomic Energy Agency came out with Japan and said they're going to start releasing water. Now, the problem I got with that statement was you couldn't contain anything after day 6. You couldn't put that genie back in the bottle. And by 2013, this is what was left of reactor 3 and 4. See, there is no content. The reactors are gone. And so there was incredible damage immediately. And I showed you some of those plume models. Here's another one. The model to your left is based on 26 days of radioactive fallout. And everybody in the nuclear industry refuses to acknowledge this happened. Everybody in the nuclear industry seen that, knew the fuel pools, reactor cores were gone, and refused to say that. That's not that's not a friend of this planet or anybody else. So for Taiwan to come out, and the Nuclear Safety Commission of all things said testing has revealed no irregularities in radiation levels after Japan's Fukushima Daiichi plant completed the 10th discharge. These people are insane. So they said there was 3,537 samples. So they never checked the water for 12 years. So when the reactors blew up, they didn't check anything, right? For 12 years. And when the International Atomic Energy Agency said we're going to pretend that we're going to finally start releasing water into the ocean, when clearly you never stopped, you can't contain that. How can you contain that? How can you contain this? You didn't. And so this is frightening. Because when you see this kind of stuff, it means like you have to read between the lines. And when you read between the lines, it says, we don't want to be blamed for exterminating the planet, and so we're going to come out and pretend that everything is okay. That way people will remember that, and they won't blame us. And then the ones that do will be disenfranchised. We'll make sure of it. It said radiation testing has been carried out by the Central Weather Administration since 2016. By the Central Weather Administration. Our cases. So they didn't find nothing. I find that really interesting because the plume covered the whole planet in 26 days. Everybody else found some. How come Taiwan didn't find none? Hang on here. Let's have a look at this before. Fukushima. So they didn't find any in the first, because everybody changed their narrative on August the 24th last year. Let me just let this load up for a moment. I'm going to bring up a bunch of studies of radioactive fallout from Fukushima worldwide. Because I really disrespect them for suggesting that there was no radioactive fallout, no radioactive in the water till at all, let alone last year. Let me go up to the bigger screen for you. Modeling a marine radionuclide dispersal in the International Atomic Energy Agency's program from the Baltic Sea in Fukushima. But yet officially now, none of this happened. Tracking the complete revolution of surface westerlies over the northern hemispheres using radionuclides emitted from Fukushima. Which reminds me, hang on. I missed it. Bear with me. That's weird. La 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 la. Okay, well, sometimes it works that way, sometimes it don't. We're almost ready. My apologies. Okay, I can't find what I'm looking for. Let's keep going here. I take these three headlines. So 16,000 workers quit because nothing got out and their paper suits were perfect, right? How you can give people paper suits at a nuclear meltdown and still call themselves humans is amazing to me. Japan foreign minister, stop claiming food is safe. What does that tell us? Taiwan can't find anything. As the public possibly worldwide sickens over time because of Fukushima, so what Taiwan is doing is it's so despicable. Global local cancer risk after Fukushima. Global cancer risk after Fukushima, 2014. But yet Taiwan can't find nothing. The geniuses for the nuclear industry in Taiwan can't find a bloody thing. Indication of radioactive fallout in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia following Fukushima. That stuff doesn't matter. Bear with me. Fukushima radiation still circling the globe. Levels consistently rise and fall in a 40-day cycle. Taiwan can't find nothing. A physician, when it comes to Fukushima, we're all downwinders. Airborne fission products in the high Arctic after Fukushima, but Taiwan can't find nothing. Behavior of radioactive cesium during incinerations of radioactivity contaminated waste from decontamination activities in Fukushima. But no, Taiwan can't find Taiwan can't, was it Taiwan? Bear with me. Sometimes I get above myself here. Yeah, Taiwan. Taiwan, where they have typhoons and massive earthquakes, and they got nuclear power. Decontamination radioactivity from contaminated vegetables. This is the strangest study. Look how many people participated in the study. Decontamination of radioactivity from contaminated vegetables derived from Fukushima nuclear accident. You can't decontaminate vegetables. Man, they're insane. This has got to be one of the craziest studies ever. So if you live in a nuclear wasteland, this study was there. This is 1.5 years since Fukushima disaster. Disaster? That's being pretty polite. Reducing radiation exposures using commonly available objects. This will blow your mind. In the soil at a depth of 10 centimeters from the surface, the radiation dose rates decreased from 3.36 to 0.65 microsieverts. But why would you measure it in microsieverts? And the count rate decreased from 3,120 to 352 counts per minute. Both the radiation dose rate and the count rate reduced when the soil was covered with everyday items, such as magazines. More than 20 millimeters, so cover your whole garden with magazines. A polyester foam board and a wooden board of the same thickness. Conclusion: to protect residents from unnecessary radiation exposure, well, you would just move them out of there, wouldn't you? In the existing exposure situation, covering contaminated soil with a wooden board or a magazine, either of them 20 millimeters thick, is useful to reduce the radiation dose. Indoor experiment. We collected soil from a site where rainwater collects at a radiation dose rate of 30 microsieverts and a count rate of 22,000 counts per minute. These are absurd. Basically 720 counts per microsiever. In this study, the radiation dose rate and count rate decreased by approximately 50% when the thickness of the shielding material, either the magazine, 2 layers of foam boards, or 2 layers of 10 millimeter wood boards, was 20 millimeter or greater. In addition, even though several types of cloth with 4 layers were used as shielding objects, their efficiency to shield a radiation dose rate was below 10%. So how good is a paper suit going to be? You need wooden paper suits, I think. They look like paper, but they're actually plywood. Polyurethane cloth had less shielding efficiency than other cloth material on top of that. Yeah, of course it does. So newspaper, 16 sheets. They want you to sit on that so your testicles for the males don't get too radioactive. Cardboard. And the author declares they have no conflict of interest. If they got no conflict of interest, why didn't they suggest everybody get evacuated? Because it's 22,000 counts per minute. And just a kilogram of soil or whatever it was. It's a nuclear wasteland when you see these numbers, right? At a nuclear plant, it used to be 185 counts per minute was an evacuation zone at a nuke site. You would wall it off, right? Observation of Fukushima fallout in Great Britain, but they didn't see it in Taiwan, Dana. Detections of xenon in Washington was 450,000 counts per minute. In the upper troposphere is above Germany. Really? It didn't. Who's up there measuring it, I wonder? Who's in the upper troposphere measuring xenon, folks? Anybody know? They didn't want to say on the ground, see? Or in the air. Up in the upper troposphere above Germany. Who's up there measuring xenon or cesium or anything else? Oh, that's right, nobody is. Radioactive contamination monitoring for the Korean public following the nuclear accident. Dry disposition velocity of cesium-137, 134 in Spain after Fukushima. Germany didn't want to acknowledge it landed on the ground. Oh, it's up in the upper troposphere. It is not down here. Well, how did America and Canada get 450,000 counts per minute per liter? Artificial radionuclides in Russia as a result of the accident, but not in Taiwan. Taiwan put up a little dome, I guess, that kept the radiation there, did they? Indicators of the Fukushima radioactive releases in northwest Romania. Detections of radio xenon in Darwin, Australia, following Fukushima. Airborne iodine cesiums due to Fukushima in Italy. Evidence of iodine cesium activities in France due to Fukushima, but not in Taiwan, Dan. It was everywhere but Taiwan. In Vietnam, in British Columbia, and they say it was harmless. The people who've done that study, it's unconscionable that they got away with what they done. Here you go. Radioactive inspections of Taiwan for food products imported from Japan. Not the fallout, but the food imported. 20,000 food products was tested by low background detectors. 46 food products were found to be contaminated by iodine cesium. However, the radiation levels are all below the limit of the Taiwanese regulations. Like the pro-nuclear community in Taiwan, like what's his name, Hang. He went on a hunger strike in order to get Fukushima food put on the ballot for a referendum. And the referendum, 70% of the people didn't want the food. So 2 years later, when the referendum was up in Taiwan, Taiwan just said, we're not going to have another referendum. We're just going to import the food now. Nuclear industry is the most dangerous creature in history, period. It really is an alien invasion. Because nothing on the planet has an autoimmune trigger to defend against radiation. It attacks everything with replicating cells. Detections of Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident radioactive traces in Maneko. They're very careful how they say it. Look at all the people that participate in the studies. Radio xenon monitoring in Beijing following Fukushima. These are such liars. It's ridiculous how they downplayed everywhere. The studies in I mean, the cesium-137 covered Canada, United States continuously. Hang on. At 1 million and 10 million atoms. There was another study of 20 million iodine 131 per liter radioactive fallout. There was another study of 220 million atoms of iodine 129 per liter. There was another study of 450,000 atoms of xenon 133 per cubic meter of air, or per square meter on the surface. Like you lose faith, right, in all countries, because the nuclear industry has destroyed everything good about any country. Radioactive impact of Fukushima accident in the Liberian Peninsula. The plume's previous pathway. Variations airborne in European locations after the arrival of Fukushima labeled air masses. Long-range transport of gases, iodine-131, and other radionuclides from Fukushima accident in southern Poland. The levels consistently rise and fall in a 40-day cycle worldwide. The whole planet was buried in a continuous radioactive plume. The whole planet was buried in a continuous radioactive plume. This model was from TEPCO's number. It was based on 20 days to your left. And so we had a really good day, thank goodness. And James Lucid donated 400, Colette donated 25. And it was $450 for the hard drives and then $50 or something for fuel. And so they didn't take back the other ones, which is okay because I need storage. I got no choice because they won't take it back, so I got to satisfy myself by saying that. But it is what it is, right? At least we got the SSD hard drives and we're back in business. And that is such an incredible relief. I just like, as soon as I got the hard drives and started heading home, I just feel all the pressure coming off my shoulders. Because there's a lot of pressure on my shoulders. I don't have any momentum as it is, and I don't want to lose the little bit that I got, right? It's very important for me every single day to do the things I do. And having the system operating properly makes it a little bit easier on me. But we are in real trouble on this planet, and pretending we're not is not a solution. Having a conversation is the solution. And acknowledging that nuclear has no redeeming qualities whatsoever, not one. At some point, the planet is going to snap. Because the nuclear industry has hoodwinked it for 80 years. At some point, this planet is going to snap awake. And ain't got no choice. And it's not going to be graceful. And the nuclear industry, the chicken eggs, are going to regret the day they were born. That I'll guarantee you. Like I say, I didn't want to do a long show tonight, so that's the show. I'm going to close down the poll. And it's an early show, and I'm following the Olympics myself. Olympics, the bizarre elections in the United States. Should Japan apologize for polluting the entire planet, the oceans and the fresh water with massive radioactive fallout? Oh yes, Dana, they should. Absolutely. Positively. Where's the end to it? There it is. Alright, so we're going to end the show on hi everybody. We'll pick up tomorrow night. I'll have a full show hopefully tomorrow night. We'll be way better shape by tomorrow, because I can do a lot of work. I was on the road a lot today, right? But tomorrow I'm not going to be on the road at all. Okay, so we're going to go out on a regular song, which is one of James Lucid's songs, anti-nuclear songs. He's got a massive amount now accumulated on his YouTube channel. I encourage people to download it, convert it to MP3, and put it on their children's phones or their nephews' and nieces' phones, and start the process of getting it out there, because there's nothing like a kid to make something go viral. And there's lots of these songs that are fantastic. Here's one of them right now that is about a troll. A troll is still trolls. It's been trolled for over a decade from the nuclear industry. We could call him Calm Down Charlie. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. You have a great day tomorrow. Hugs for everybody. Thank you, everybody. You're doing a moral and ethical thing, and that's amazing. We'll see everybody on the next show. Take care, folks.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford's show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says, hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.